My career, I started out at Yale University and then went to work at Stanford Research Institute doing military electronic sensors and remote measurement systems. Went to Stanford Graduate School. And then I worked professionally as an electrical engineer. Started two companies, one called ETAC, which pioneered vehicle navigation systems, another called Sport Vision, which does tracking and highlighting of televised sports. So it's used to track and highlight the race cars in the US and NASCAR and IRL and so forth. We also track and highlight the hockey puck and the baseball and put the yellow first down line in American football games. And then throughout my whole career I've navigated professionally, but only part-time, never full-time until 2004. In 2004 I quit my normal job and then joined the ABN AMRO team and navigated the Volvo Ocean Race on ABN AMRO, sailing with Mike Sanderson and the guys. And then since then I've been sailing full-time with Team Origin as technical director and on Speedboat, which is a 100-foot monohull that I navigated. It was also called Virgin Money during a transatlantic record attempt. Prior to the Volvo race, I navigated on 3 different Pyewackets, Sayonara, and the catamaran PlayStation Cheyenne for Steve Fawcett. Groupama 3 is legendary around everywhere in the world, not only for the quality of the boat, but the caliber of the crew. So it's a real honor for me to have an opportunity to sail on Groupama 3. Typically, the navigator is, I'm working down below during the time when the boat is just steadily sailing along. But I'll be on deck for every maneuver, every sail change, every tack, every jibe. So whenever there is work going on deck, reefing, unreefing, whatever, I'll be on deck helping. And so I do end up spending a fair amount of time on deck, and I'm always on deck for all of the interesting bits, meaning whenever the boat is being maneuvered. I've sailed on a number of multi-hulls before, including Lakota, Steve Fawcett's trimaran, and Cheyenne PlayStation, which is the 125-foot catamaran, and even the Stars and Stripes America's Cup catamaran. And it's interesting that monohulls recently have started to have some of the performance characteristics of the multi-hulls, where it's important to take advantage of their speed and to always be, sending it, so to speak, always be, sailing quickly. And so in that sense, I suspect that Groupama 3, I'll find that it's similar. But nevertheless, there's no question that Groupama 3 is at a level of development far beyond any multi-hull that I've had the opportunity to sail. Groupama 3 makes PlayStation look like it's from a different century almost, just the level of sophistication and development of the boat. It's interesting, the faster the boat, the more fun it is to navigate and the more challenging it is to navigate, because the faster the boat is, the more options you have. And with a very fast boat, like Groupama 3, you can change between weather systems, you can pass fronts from the back to the front. And on smaller, slower monohulls, you don't have that option. And so a boat like Groupama 3 is both far more fun to navigate, but also more challenging because you have more options that you have to choose between. Sailing against records, there's a couple of aspects that make it more difficult. One is that there's all the work ahead of time to pick the departure time. And that's critically important to pick the right departure time. And you can make 2 mistakes in the departure time. You can depart in a time that turned out not to be optimum, or you can fail to depart in a time where you should have. And so it's so during the standby period, the navigator is working just as hard as the navigator works during the actual record attempt. So that's a difficult part. The other difficult part of a record attempt is you're really sailing against everybody in history and everybody in the future, not just against half a dozen competitors. And when you're sailing in a race, you may have a dozen or half a dozen competitors and you know where they are. And so you can cover them and you can sail against them. But in a record, you're really sailing against everybody in the past and everybody in the future. I haven't had the opportunity to work with Sylvain before, but I very much enjoyed meeting him in Toulouse and was very, very impressed with how pleasant he was to work with and how productive it was to work with him and how skilled Sylvain was. And so I'm looking forward to working with Sylvain. And the way I take advantage of working with someone ashore is I use their help to make sure that I'm looking at all the most important issues and helping me, pick between what are the most dependable and important sources of data in different situations. And I've been navigating since I'm 14, and I've got a lot of experience with the weather, and I've taken many courses and so forth, but there's no question that Sylvain is far more experienced than I am about the weather and is far more expert about the trade-offs between the different weather models. And so when it's a choice of, whether we use, the GFS or whether we use the CEP, EC, MWF, or whether we use, one of the mesoscale models, I have my opinions, but I'll certainly be relying on Sylvain to also bring to my attention situations where one model or some other model may do better, or where he may think that all the models are wrong and something else might be happening. The other thing I'll do is I'll be asking questions of Sylvain. So when I have a trade-off between two possibilities, I'll ring up Sylvain and get his help in helping me weigh the two trade-offs. I actually have sailed quite a few single-handed races, but on monohulls. I've got a 40-foot monohull in California, and I raced it in the Trans-Pacific race, and actually won and held the overall monohull record for a number of years in the single-handed Transpac race. And it is very different, sailing single-handed versus sailing fully crewed. When you're single-handed, it's constantly a battle of sort of triage, where you're trying to figure out where's the most important place to put what energy you have, whether it's steering or changing sails or trimming or navigating. Whereas in a fully crewed boat, my goal is to do the navigator's job perfectly, meaning to have the energy and the time to get all of the relevant data and process it appropriately and make the right decisions. Working with in the decision-making process, Frank. And so it is a very different process. And I think sailing on a fully crewed boat, the challenge of a navigator is to try to do as good a job as you possibly can, given that you can focus on it. My goals for the trip from Lorient to Istanbul is both to get familiar with the boat and its performance, its electronic equipment, and then also get familiar with sailing with Frank and the watch captains and the crew. And I'm working hard on my French, but right now my French is not very good at all. And so that's a challenge as well. So I'll also be working on my French.